Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're going to start off with a very exciting presentation. We had 3 of our Madison County schools that were selected as sale sites, and that was Madison County Elementary, Owens Crossroads, and New Hope Elementary. And the Schools Foundation kind of helped gather this support, but we also have stakeholders and constituents that supported this. And from the Community Foundation is Melissa Thompson, Elizabeth Fleming with the Schools Foundation. With the Heart of the Valley YMCA is Lamont Singleton and Beth Wilkerson. The Care Center, we got Don Lassiter, Whitney Ivy, and Brandy Sampson. And we're going to turn the floor over to you, Elizabeth. If you just want to kind of talk a little bit about the SEL program, it's something that we work together pretty closely on, but give you guys kind of a chance, and we got a little presentation to go with it too.
Yes, we're excited to come before you this evening with a check presentation, but I never miss an opportunity to tell you a little bit about why we're doing what we're doing. So SAIL stands for Summer Adventures in Learning, and this is a collaborative effort between our organization and really the best strategic partner I can think of right now at the Community Foundation and you guys and your schools and the funders, and I'll let Melissa talk a little bit about that piece of it. But we know that students are out of school more than they're in school, and we know that schools cannot do the work alone to ensure strong, prepared students for their next grades and for their next move in their careers. So we have partnered together to make sure that we're putting a very intentional funding available for sites across our community. And some of your sites have been with us since the very beginning. So we're going into our 3rd summer focused with your schools, and we are so excited to continue that partnership and, more importantly, to continue to improve what we're doing. We learn from you guys when it comes to continuous improvement. And this was new. We piloted it at 3 schools. We're now in 6 sites. And it's exciting to see the community rally behind what summer learning means, because we know it disproportionately impacts students who are coming from low-income backgrounds where they are not able to keep up with their peers. So together with others, we are trying to make sure that we continue to provide the best opportunities for students across Madison County, and y'all are a huge part of that. So really tonight's a little bit about a celebration, and if you ever have any questions about what we're doing, we are always welcome to answer those, and we also would love to talk deeper with you when we have more time about what is going on in SAIL. So with that, I would like to introduce Melissa Thompson.
At the Community Foundation, one of the things that we're very interested in is bringing strategic solutions to our community's biggest needs. And with SAIL, it really is a collaboration of funders. There are about over 20 funders who've come together this summer, and our program partner, and then obviously we couldn't do it without the site representatives who are on the front lines really dealing with the students. And SAIL shows that results matter, whereas kids would typically lose 2 to 3 months of learning during a summer. If you have intentional academic programming, and that's kind of the buzzwords for SAIL, we know that these kids can gain 2 to 3 months. So it really ends up being a 4 to 6 month swing for these kids. And so on behalf of the funders, we're so proud to present a check to you tonight to the Heart of the Valley YMCA, who is the program partner for SAIL for these 3 sites for $75,000.
Awesome.
All right, we're going to get everybody up to come take a picture representing Madison County Elementary's Amy Mason and Adam Hampton from Owens Crossroads and Jamie Burton from New Hope. And the board members, we're going to get in front and take a picture together.
I'm usually the one in the back where I can.
See, she can't see you. See, I was worried about there.
No, I think you can have them. It's just a question of whether they work.
They actually do some rigorous pre-test and post-test and have a lot of data to show, and that's what they show the funders to get folks to drop the money into that. And I appreciate all your hard work, and great job, Elizabeth, and the Schools Foundation for just buying into us. Really appreciate it. Dave, do you want to handle?
Did you have anything?
No,
on
I did
C?
not. That was,
Okay.
we skipped over
All
that
right.
just to go to the presentation.
All right. So the next agenda on the item on the agenda is a request to address the board. Is Ms. Johnson here this evening? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and read this first, okay, and then we'll go from there. Your comments will be limited to 5 minutes. Okay. I have read your letter requesting to address the board. It is my understanding that you will be discussing student records that are confidential under FERPA. The board is more than happy to hear your comments in executive session, so closed door, along with any comments involving the general reputation and character, physical condition, professional competence, mental health, or in some instances, job performance of an individual. So we will be more than happy. We'll go ahead and adjourn into a short executive session, and we will hear your comments in executive session.
We have the small conference room out until the left.
Okay? So I need a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn into executive session. Any discussion? Barring none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will be back as soon as we're done with the presentation. All right. No, go ahead.
That's a very so they Casey already knows this. There were in the report. There's all of them are, oh yeah, right. CBS 2 weeks ago. CBS this morning 2 weeks ago. Yes. Up to this whole they call it and Kevin will show then there's what's it wait. I mean they're just and it's fine with me because Chris shows I love Chris shows before he's my this is I've never been touched by that. So that's the guy where Andy Chris went and shared it in newsroom and Morford said he had forced it. So you give it. Shooting teacher that created teacher. No one agreeing to do the kid for 4 years. Everybody's not doing the same. That's it. Which we're building, we don't, I think it's just build a project. So Thank
She can do a lot of her work from there. She's actually excited about it. She's been working with them some on some other things too.
Just incorporate it into what she's doing.
I got some people.
What's this? Oh, that's for me or you?
That's,
Oh, I got mine, okay. The Madison County Board of Education is back in session.
all right, a couple of informational discussion items. We've talked about the exam exemption policy. Last year, we kind of reinstated an older policy that was about 8 or 10 years old. And so I have that exam exemption policy that we're operating under for this current school year up top. Essentially, the rationale that was presented was we have chronic absenteeism, part of the state accountability. And even though we've helped with chronic absenteeism, we still had a lot in our high schools. So you can see there that we had a course average of 90 and 3 absences would give you an exemption, 80 and 2, a 70 and 1, and a 60 and 0. Why we picked those? Well, that's just what we had back in the day. And so we've talked about this with principals, with teachers, and with, in fact, my student group. I have a student advisory group of students from all 5 of our high schools. And I asked them their input on this, and I want to present to you kind of what they had and for consideration. Again, it's for discussion tonight. We approved an academic guide without an exemption policy right now. So as of nothing changes, there is no exemptions except for advanced placement students. So there's the descriptor is a little bit different here. I'll read that to you. It says chronic absenteeism is an at-risk indicator and a measure on the state accountability report card. Every student misses valuable instruction time when he or she is absent from school. For this reason, the board establishes the following comprehensive final examination exemption guidelines. The first bullet, the student will earn the option of exempting a comprehensive final exam if one of the following minimum criteria for attendance and academic achievement is met. And it was 80 above is 6 absences, or no more than 6, and 60 above is no more than 4. So the big differences here, there's a couple of the bullets, but the big difference here, instead of by each grade, there's basically 2 levels. And what the students kind of said is if you get the flu and you're out a week, you can still be exempt. And the 6 absences is per class, they're period absences. And so technically, you're in classes each semester, or you alternate throughout the day. So you can actually have 6 in your A classes, 6 in your B, or 6 and 6. So you could actually accumulate 12 absences, and if you strategically place them, still be exempt if you have an A or a B. A C or a D was 4. The reason they picked the even numbers, and this was very smart by them, was we have some 9-week classes, like health, driver's ed, and for those classes, you can just half them, and there would be 3 and 2. All right, the other bullets on there would be a student who earns exemption status still has the option to take the comprehensive final examination in an effort to raise, not lower, the final grade average for the course. The comprehensive final examination grade will count 20% of the student's final grade. This last bullet was not their suggestion, but mine. this says advanced placement courses will follow this exemption policy. On the back, if you look at the back, currently, this is what's in our academic guide. It says all 9th through 12th grade students who will take the final examination with the following exception. AP students who take the AP test for their course will be exempt from their final exam. These students will have the option of taking the final exam. If a student chooses to take the final exam, they receive credit on the final exam, will count in their final average. I went through, the reason for that is there's a little bit of data here, and I tried to determine, do we have AP students that are chronically absent? And we do. I chose to look at AP English in grades 11 and 12, because if I looked at all AP courses, you would be counting some students twice. Now, not every AP student takes AP English, but it was a good sampling. So at Buckhorn, currently this year, there's 13 students in AP English class with 10 or more absences, 24 at Hazel Green, 11 Madison County, 6 at New Hope, 34 at Sparkman. So we have 88 students who are likely going to be chronically absent with that. So that's, to me, why I think we need to wrap AP in this exemption policy, especially since we're allowing a little more forgiveness with 4 to 6. We also looked at a sample of students. We couldn't do this with every student, but we took a group of 9th graders and projected them to a group of 10th graders just to see if this was affecting those same group of absences. And over 60% had less absences than a year ago, but 48% had 2 or fewer absences than a year ago. And so we felt like that was a somewhat significant difference there. So with that, I want to kind of bring this up for discussion, but I think this is what I would be prepared to bring to you guys for recommendation of approval at our next meeting. We kind of need to either jump on or not do, close the book on the exemption thing. So after talking with a lot of different folks, I think this is what I feel the best in bringing to you guys. So open the floor.
We've only had 1 year with this exemption policy, correct?
Correct.
So there'd be no, because one of the things that I know we talked a lot about whether the absenteeism was effective, but really what I would want to know is whether their ability to be successful as they moved on. I mean, part of what we're eliminating is some rigor by having an exemption policy. So is that elimination actually affecting them in their ability to be successful in college when it comes time to take higher level exams? Because that's what we're trying to prepare them for. And I don't know how you would do that with 1 year.
So you could, that is a point, but I would also add, we're taking an automatic exemption away from our AP students. So technically, we're adding rigor by having this exemption policy compared to last year, because we give over 3,000 AP exams. So that's an automatic 3,000 exemptions we just give, no matter how often you come to school or not.
And that exam does not affect their grade, correct?
It doesn't, because we don't get the results till July. So yeah, it's impossible to kind of go back and retroactively.
So really, they're kind of paying to not take the final. You want to look at it that way.
Yeah, and there's some students that might think that way, but it is, but I don't think that's necessarily why they're taking the AP exam. I mean, our students have been pretty successful.
I understand there are some that are, but
How did you come up with the 80 and the 60?
Instead of an A, a B, and a C and D, these were the students' recommendations. They said, let's group all of our A and B folks together in C and D, because it's kind of like you get that 88 versus a 90, and all of a sudden that absent matters on one, and that way they feel like students would typically know where they stand more. It gives a little leeway of, is there something happening on that last test that's going to rise or drop, and depending on if you can miss an extra day or two. So A and B students know if they make A's and B's pretty much, and so.
I'm okay with the 80. I'd almost like to see the 60 more of a 70, kind of at that C level versus a D.
Yeah, I find it
kind of giving those kids that are getting a D a free pass.
Yeah, it's a good thought. Why would a student with a 60 even be eligible?
I agree.
Exempted.
If you're not reaching a C level at 70, you should be required to take the.
Because they might have a 50 if they weren't coming to school.
Well, that's a true point. That's a true
I mean,
point.
somebody in Huntsville had a thing about you have to be present to win. Children are not going to learn anything if they're not in school. So,
Good point.
you know,
If I may, your principals would, I think, would argue that that's the group really this exemption policy affects. If that's, I don't know this for a fact. I suspect if we broke down our chronic absenteeism, it would be higher with our CD kids than it would be with our AV kids. I don't know that, though. I could be wrong. The anecdotal evidence that we get from talking with our administrators, that's who they say this policy has had a, an impact on. And when we ran the data earlier this year of kids who were chronically absent last year at the same time this year, it was having a positive impact on so that would be the only argument I would make as to why, even though fully understand, it does seem to set the bar low, but as Ms. Stowe said, I think our principals would kind of say the same thing. Those kids won't be in school then if they, and therefore the grade would be even lower than 60.
Fair point. That's a fair point.
And chronic absenteeism is an indicator of being at risk, and grades in the 60s are another indicator of at risk. So if we can tease them into coming to school, you got to be present to learn, kind of a thing. And they can make a 60 now and be exempt. It's just we kind of were heard from parents who had that, I've got a doctor's appointment, or I've got a funeral, or those kind of things. This hopefully will allow a little bit of grace in that, and they're still not going to be labeled chronically absent.
well, and I would beg these instructors to make the rigor such that, we can't go anywhere till the AP courses are over. If we want to go on a college visit or whatever, you can't go till you've been to that, because it's not that they're exempt, they just don't want to miss, what's being presented in class that day.
So we had actually one of my students in this, got the flu, missed 4 days, but she also had college visits to maybe NYU and Tulane. And she was going to be, at first, before she got sick, she's like, I'm going to lose my exemption, but I want to take those visits and I'll just take my exam, whatever. So I'm going to be fine on it, but I'd rather obviously be exempt. So one of their suggestions was to count the college visits, not be counted as an absence. So our what are we calling Thursday? Our career exploration day, the day where we have 7,000 students absent, because it's Take Your Child to Work Day, the last Thursday in April. So we're just calling it Career Exploration Day. So if you don't want to go with if your parent has a bad job, you don't want to follow them, you can go with an uncle or a mentor or whatever. But you can also go visit a college on that day, and since it's part of a career exploration. So we were going to talk with our principals, allowing one more day and that day for college visits to count as part of an assignment. If you make it as part of an assignment where you're going and you're reporting back what you're doing, it can be a school activity and not an absence, even though it's to do a college visit. So we're going to try to work that into there too. That doesn't need to be approval. It's how we code that absence and basically how that student reports that.
I like the fact that we're adding the exemption policy back into the AP courses. I mean, they have that period of time between finals and the AP exam, and I think that's a good thing. So I'm okay with adding that back.
Where they have to have attendance
Yeah.
to be exempt, not automatic.
Yep.
So is this going to be every absence, or is this, you had a clause that said absences due to approved school activities don't count? Is that going to carry
Right.
through?
Because if it's a school activity, it's not an absence.
Yeah.
Like if they go to the state championship basketball game, that's not they're actually, it's kind of like a field trip. So there was really no need to have that bullet in there.
Because it's about coding.
That's correct. So we actually did take that last bullet out
Okay.
for this one because it's
I was
not
wondering if
needed.
that was intended.
I need some clarification, bullet 2 and 3. It says, in an effort to raise, not lower, the final average for the course, okay?
So if a kid has a 78 and they want to take their final exam, we've had, and they want to choose to take it, to try to bring their grade up. If they're exempt, and they want to come take their exam to try to get a B in the class. We want to allow them to do that. We think that's a very, strict, proud of them to do valor in that exercise. But we've had some teachers in the past to go, well, if you take it, and I've got to grade it, if it lowers your grade, I'm going to count it to lower your grade. So we wanted to be very clear that if a student's coming to take it to improve their grade and they're exempt, they can at least know if it doesn't improve their grade, just mark them exempt.
So it's like a free shot.
The person who earns exemption, that's what that's for. And
Yes, ma'am.
then the next bullet, the comprehensive final exam will count 20% of the student's final grade.
That's what we've always done. I think that's too much.
But, I mean, I'm questioning, to me, that kind of contradicts are we still talking about kids who are exempt, or are we talking about everybody that takes it?
Yeah. Everybody that takes it, and for that second bullet, people, if it improves their grade, it counts 20%. So if they have a 78 and they make an 80, it only counts 20%. It's probably not going to boost you up to an 80. But if you take an exam and it's on that report card that you have an exam, so you'll have 3 slots, 3 columns. You'll have a first semester, a second semester, and a final exam. They count 40%, 40%, 20%.
So with 6 absences, if you had a person, the biggest pushback that I think we have received is students who have a severe illness and end up, for instance, a car wreck. I'm going to make an assumption that with a car wreck, we would arrange for e-learning. My concern, and a good example, is a student with diabetes. We have basically no endocrinologist for pediatrics here in Huntsville. The only way to get your care is to go to Nashville or Birmingham. So there's no way not to miss a day, because they don't do it on Saturday. So with 6, you're telling me that for the most part, these classes are every other day, so you could arrange to not miss 6 classes in a certain class if you felt like you needed to exempt that. Is that?
And it's not just AP. It can be a semester. So you could miss 6 days in one semester and 6 days in the other semester.
Because what I don't want to do with this policy and what we have done in the past is accidentally exclude people from the ability to become exempt based on something they cannot control.
And if it's a medical reason, we would really encourage them to get on a 504 to do that. We had one student that had brain surgery unexpectedly that came up, and so I know the family of that, and I said, hey, why don't you look at getting on a 504? We can serve the student.
Well, even a
there.
concussion is another good example. With a concussion, if it's severe enough, the doctor will write you to be out of school for sometimes as long as 2 weeks, and you'll have.
It needs to be documented in a 504. If it's a doctor's note, it really gets into a lot of gray areas on what we can approve or not approve. So we don't want to do doctor's excuses. But if it's going to be a long-term kind of a thing, we can work and get a 504 plan for those.
Does that need to be placed into the policy so parents read it and understand it? Because it's kind of a,
Well, I think what needs to happen is our principals and our registrars need to have some more education on offering that, because a lot of times they know that happens and they just don't think about the sequela that occurs if you don't offer that.
And that we're at a time, a decade or so ago where we didn't have anybody on a 504.
Yeah.
So we, determining 504s or not 504s, Mary and her team works with that. Keith and Alan work with that. And so we've gotten pretty good at identifying those and working those out.
My concern is we don't have the data. I mean, we were trying to address chronic absenteeism. I mean, it was presented a long time ago, but today we don't know if we're accomplishing that or not, because we don't have the data.
And the year's not over. We do know that all of our high schools, essentially all of our high schools, have over 20% of their students are chronically absent. And that was the reason to do this. This is our first year in that. We don't have completion of that because the year's still going on. But what we've seen, even comparing any cohort of kids from last year to this year, is attendance is improving. Now, we don't have the overall percentage of chronic absenteeism, and we won't get that until late in the summer. So that's the thing. You're kind of looking at something, and the early returns, the exit polling, the early returns are showing that it has made a positive influence.
But we're just a few days out. I mean, can't we get some data?
We have, and that's what, the data that you have on the back,
22%.
and Mr. Solly presented some probably at the end of the semester data. With the first chart shows that we do have still a problem with chronic absenteeism among our AP students. The bottom line there, we just took a whole cohort of 9th graders and 10th graders and have their absences, and 65% have better attendance than last year. Almost 50% have a significantly better attendance than last year. So to me, that shows that the exemption policy may be playing a role in that.
But those aren't chronically absent people.
No.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, the whole point of the policy is chronic absenteeism, but we don't have any data on that.
So some of the data that Tim presented before with the chronic absent, we took our chronically absent students and we had how much they had year to date compared to this year, and they showed a significant reduction in that. And I could have
What I
prepared all that. We had
remember
that
was
before.
only like 200 kids. I can't remember the data, but when I looked at it, I didn't think it was very significant at all. But now we've got a whole nother semester almost to look at. So can we have the data?
I can get that to you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing is somebody can go all the way through high school and never have a final exam. And that doesn't seem to prepare them very well. So, I mean, can you do it like for maybe 11th and 12th and not 9th and 10th? Or can we have some kind of compromise so that at least a student can get some experience studying for final exams before they get to college?
I guess it's the weight of if a final exam is what prepares you for college, I think there's more to it than that. I think that may be putting a little more weight on it. And now, the one thing about advanced placement, if they're taking those classes, and our folks are, we have a huge participation, more than any other system in the state, of students taking those AP classes, and they are rigorously prepared for cumulative knowledge. I mean, if you go to one of our Saturday study sessions, you'll see hundreds of students on a Saturday for one subject for 6 hours studying.
There's other students that go to college that don't take AP exams. Like, I can envision one in my home.
And that's where, if you as a parent feel that that's valuable and the student does, they can opt to take those exams, even if they have perfect attendance. Because everybody that's exempt can take them. So if you as a parent like, no, I don't want my child to take the exam, you absolutely can do that, and there's no pressure on it either. So, I mean, they can do it to improve it. So it does allow that. But when you take exams, and let's just say you're on an alternating schedule, or even on a block where you have 3 core classes, you're taking 3 comprehensive exams in a matter of 2 days. Even in college, they spread exams over 5 days. It's still a pretty stressful thing. And we do value that. All of our middle schools are taking exams, comprehensive tests this year. They're counting as part of a test for the 4th 9 weeks. But, all of our 7th and 8th grade students are taking it in the 4 core areas this year. So all of our 7th and 8th graders are taking 4 comprehensive tests. And teachers can give, you really want to give, if I'm a math teacher, I'm giving comprehensive. If I'm testing something in Algebra 2, I'm pulling stuff from the first semester in there. It's not necessarily an exam where these 3 questions are from Chapter 1 and these 4 are from Chapter 2. So, as our teachers are assessing, and we've got some ways to go on how we assess and what does a grade mean, but we don't want kids to forget what they've learned in the first semester with that. What does taking an exam mean? What if kids aren't doing well on exams? Are they more prepared just because they took it? So it's not just taking the exam as makes somebody ready for college, but and when there's value in preparing for that. Even students that are exempt can complete the year in review and those kind of kind of things. They generally do participate in that.
So we'll get the data.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to that, and we'll get some of that data to you, and I'll just email it to you guys so y'all have some time to look at it. And be ready for a recommendation at the next meeting in 2 weeks. All right. Start and stop times. You know, we're not going to ask you guys to approve a PLC day. That would have been shortening of the day less than what, if to short it below, I think 7 hours or 6.5 hours required board approval. We're not doing that. What we are going to do is to extend the elementary day by 15 minutes. Right now, our elementary schools and our K-8s get out at 2:30. We're going to extend that to 2:45. This is something that teachers want, administrators want. By how we're doing it 2:30 right now, we are on the edge of not having enough hours, classroom hours, to meet the state mandated requirements. If we had missed a day for, I don't know, snow or a tornado, and it wasn't a state of emergency, we would have had to use our weather day for our elementary folks. So this puts our elementary and our high schools and other secondary schools with the same length of day with that. So that doesn't require board approval, but I do want to bring that up and just see what comments you have or any questions or why we might be doing this.
The only thing I was wondering is how that affects the buses, because I know we have some large routes in my area particularly where we share. So if we're shortening that time period, are we going to be able to get the buses off of Madison Crossroads down to Sparkman Middle or Harvest Sparkman in time?
Yeah, we did. We did look at that, Carrie and Eddie, and we actually met again today. The particular concern was in New Hope, where every bus double routes. Every route for the elementary school comes back and runs a high school route. So it's basically we were clocking what time are they getting back on campus to run those, and most are getting back within a half hour. All of them are getting back within 40 minutes. So we'll be in good shape on that, and we've looked at it in the Sparkman area because Madison Crossroads has a large zone. Not everybody there is a double route, but some are, and some of the shorter routes do come over and share. New Hope is pretty much the only place where every single bus is a double route.
And I think they would love to all be on the same time.
They would, and we looked at that.
Start and stop time to be the same, so they wouldn't have to do that, because I think there are not a whole lot of children on the bus, and they're running, all the way down Hobbs Island, which is
With very few students. So what you have at New Hope, you have 9 grade levels with a K-8, and then 4 grade levels with a K-12, with a 9-12. So we looked at that. What if you just said, hey, if they just start and end at the same time and everybody had their own bus, basically running K-12 buses? And what it would do, it would make the routes that the time that the kids sat on the bus, it would be longer. The amount of time that drivers are working every day would be shorter. So the drivers in the New Hope area, they're working between 15 and 18 hours. So their days, that's a week. And we basically pay them for 20 hours of work. But the route times those kids get home are very quick. And so it's kind of, we could do that. We could all do single routes at New Hope, but it would lengthen the route time for the students, and it would have K-12 students on the same bus. But you're right, we do have Hobbs Island where we have one high school student rides Hobbs Island. But if we put her on another bus, well, what else are we going to do to run that Hobbs Island route? They're running it for elementary. It doesn't save us any money to do that. We actually met on that for 2 different days to look at it. And with the potential grade change configurations that might be coming a year from now, we figured it just is best to maybe stick with this one more year and then take another look at it a year from now.
Kindergartners on a high school bus, would you?
They used to all the time.
They used to all the time. If you made it with New Hope, if you made it the same, we explored that and we decided let's not do that right now.
They probably would.
And kindergartners on middle school buses for a while too.
About that, since it's been different. It wasn't the parents that I heard from.
It makes for long days for bus drivers because they drive elementary and then a high school route. So they're working about 4 hours a day. But it's kind of, why are we doing this? And if it gets the kids home as quick as possible and it's separating the age group, we think the way we're doing it now is pretty optimized with that. But
I'm glad we're adding in the additional 15 minutes, but I've harped on it before, and all I would do is just ask you and the staff to just look at the car rider line. It just, I don't understand why, if school begins at 7:30 and I pull up to an elementary school at 7:40, we've got parents still pulling into the car rider line to drop their kids off. It's not the kids' fault, it's getting the parents to start doing the right thing, and it just kills me when I see that, because parents aren't teaching the kids to do the right thing. We've got teachers out there that are still running the car rider line that are supposed to be inside the classroom. All I ask is just take a look at it to see. I mean, I'm glad we're adding the 15 minutes. Maybe that'll help, because apparently we're starting some of our schools 15 minutes late. But just
Yeah.
take a look at that so that we are changing that behavior, not of the child, but of the parent, to get there. And we run buses, so if you can't get up in the morning to get your kid to the school in time, then put them on the bus.
So, Tim, is our official start time 7:45? So 7:45 is it. Now, we have some schools at 7:30, they start to do some stuff to get the kids kind of engaged. But
even 7:40 is too late, because if a teacher's expected to be in the classroom to get ready at 7:45.
right, the folks working the car rider lines.
That's still, you've got to have a cutoff at some point so that the parents know, okay, well, now I have to walk my kid in. It's just something to look at. I'm not.
Yeah, we'll work on that to get them in. But it would be a 7:45 day to a 2:45 day. Is that right, Tim? From 7:45 to 2:45 will be our K-8 and elementary day is what will be extended. So we'll start to communicate that out to parents now on that. All right.
Ready?
We're working on that.
Yep.
All right, is Lindsay Bate present? All right, I recommend approval to ban an individual, Lindsay Bate, from Madison County school campuses, from all Madison County school campuses and all school-sponsored events.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval to ban an individual, Lindsay Bates, from all Madison County school campuses and all Madison County school-sponsored events. Any discussion?
One time there was 2 people, but that's,
We pulled the other.
okay. We don't need to
No.
worry about that one ever? Okay.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor of the recommendation, say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the financial statement, payment of bills, and the cash reports for March of 2019.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recommendation of approval of the financial statement, payments of bills, and cash reports for March of 2019. Any discussion? I think Karen sent a pretty well-explanatory email to give us all that information. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the following bid as attached.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of the bid as attached. Any discussion? If there's no additional discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the resolution and amended agreement between the Madison County Board of Education and Graces of Gurley Incorporated and the Health Care Authority for the City of Huntsville.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval for the resolution and amended agreement between the Madison County Board of Education and Gurley of Graces of Gurley Incorporated and the Health Care Authority for the City of Huntsville. Is there any discussion?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
Mr. Wilkerson, this is just for the children, correct? Okay. Ms. Stowe asked me that before the board meeting, and I was reading the document. I would like to make an amendment to the proposal, if that's okay with the superintendent.
Okay.
On the amended lease agreement, right under the legal description, it just says for the possession and occupation by the lessees to house the Hills Clinic and/or other healthcare clinic. And it does not identify that it's just for the children. So I would like to add the phrase that's found in the resolution to low-income children in Title I schools. So just for clarification, if I could reread that so everybody understands.
Carrie, does that work for that? I know at some, like the New Hope Clinic, some children from like Jackson County or Marshall County will come. Does that?
Yeah, and I don't know if they all qualify to be low income, I mean, all the
Okay,
children.
well, can we just say for children? Or how would, I mean, can we put some language in there that
Yeah.
means they won't have people, they wouldn't have adults from the community coming on campus during the school day? I think that would be the concern.
Oh, it says for the provision and general welfare of community.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm more familiar with how the New Hope one works than the Gurley Hills Clinic.
Well, this may make it operate a little bit
Well,
differently than.
But yeah, it's not for
The
adults.
resolution also says, it says, whereas the Madison County Board wishes to amend the grant of the request for the sole purpose of establishing and operating a Heels Clinic and/or for healthcare for the community.
Well, this is the language, though, that the purpose of the Heels
Right.
Clinic and/or other healthcare clinic will be to provide school-based medical and dental care to low-income children in Title I schools. That's where I got the language from
I got you.
for the, that's why.
So it's in the resolution.
It's in the resolution, and that language was in the prior resolution.
Okay.
So I was copying it from that to the lease.
Carrie's on the board for the Graces of Gurley, so he's, I think, aren't you, still? Okay.
You need to just put children of the community.
Yeah, clinic for the children of the community.
Yeah, that'll be good. You okay with that, Cindy?
Yes.
What number is that you're looking?
Okay. So on the resolution.
The resolution.
The last whereas clause
Okay.
will read, whereas the Madison County Board of Education wishes to amend the grant of the requested donation to Graces of Gurley, Inc. for the sole purpose of establishing and operating a Heels Clinic and/or other healthcare clinic for the children of the community. And that will take care of that concern. And then on the amended lease agreement itself, it will read, for the possession and occupation by the lessees to house a Heels Clinic and/or other healthcare clinic for children
On the lease properties.
for and during the term of the lease agreement as set forth herein. I think that works.
Just take out Title I schools. Just say
Yeah,
for,
you'll just say Heels Clinic and/or other healthcare clinic for children for and during the term of this lease agreement as set forth herein.
We're actually looking at making on the street itself, parking, right beside the street, there's some cars off parking, adding a few more areas, so that even students that may not be in school that day, when they're abroad, they actually don't enter on, they don't actually have to enter the campus, they'll actually park on the street and walk right into the building from that location. So, just to help with that concern of anybody being on campus, the building itself sits in a very corner, very southeast corner. And so they can actually park right there and walk right in the building with actually being on the campus per se.
so can we go ahead?
Do enter by the same entry point as you would enter from school, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So we can go ahead and approve the,
If the superintendent can amend his recommendation for the changes we discussed.
I would like to amend my recommendation to include the children in the resolution and
Very nice.
and the lease.
how am I supposed to do that?
Yep.
We'll need to rescind our
I
motion.
I need a motion and a second for the amendment.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to change it, to amend the lease agreement and the resolution between the Madison County Board of Education and Gurley of Graces of Gurley Incorporated and the Healthcare Authority of the City of Huntsville. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 And I abstain.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Recommended.
Hold on. Do we have to go, we voted on the changes to the amendment, now we have to go back and vote on the,
No.
okay, we got it, okay.
You vote on everything.
4-0. All right.
Okay.
I recommend approval of the following contracts for services as attached.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recommendation of the approval for the contract of services as attached. Any discussion? If there's no additional discussion, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval for the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for recommendation of approval of the following personnel items and addendum as it's submitted. Any discussion?
On the transfer, there's, on the first one,
The addendum?
no, I don't think it's an addendum. Is it?
There's,
No, not that one, the regular one,
The first one?
that one. Is there a reason to do that now?
Number one,
Yeah. I know,
That's-
but,
our librarian. That's the librarian.
I know, but why do you do it now?
Well, because it's gotta be done, so this way when the school can go ahead and adjust all the different openings. And I already had a meeting with the librarian, and she's already met with the schools and excited about that. It's all got to be done this month and next month before school gets out. And so we're trying to get everything handled, the transfer stuff done early, so that we can concentrate on the non-renewal and the renewal.
I guess, is there any, like, the numbers for Monrovia are really tight as far as what, I think the criteria is 1,000, and we're right up there near 1,000. So is there any way to,
That's a state funded union, man, that state indicates how many, like, we're having to get per school based on enrollment. That's not, like you have, the board has a say in counselors and APs, but the librarian piece is basically what they earn from the state of Alabama due to the enrollment of the ADM. That's why that unit was lost there. It has nothing to do with a board issued guideline that allows for more or less of the librarian.
there's no wiggle
So
room?
that's right, no, that unit will be removed from the state of Alabama. They won't be giving us to the library.
So the next year, you could get it back potentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that, you're right. So the board has chosen to adopt a document with counselors and assistant principals. And, because we locally fund those, we typically do not locally fund librarians, so we don't have a chart for that. If they want to, obviously, that's something y'all could take up to do that, but it's, that would be atypical of anything we've done as far as creating a way to get more librarians.
So we don't locally
sense.
fund any librarians?
Walnut Grove.
So we do locally fund librarians? Okay.
Because they're so small.
What's the threshold for the one, 300 or something like that, whatever it is? It's,
But they're well below that.
How many
So there's not
students
an-
was Walnut Grove, huh?
230.
get that for you.
230? Something like that?
so what is,
It has 1,000, almost.
So Ben, you'll think around like a half at 250, for a day and a half of the librarian at 250.
so the expectation is to have,
Yeah, everybody
Teacher.
earns a half, and so they're locally funded at a half. I think they earn a half from the state, and we locally.
Allowing local support for any librarian in the system.
Right, so I guess maybe the same way we got that half, could we consider that for Monrovia, because you got 1,000 students there with just one? I mean, it seems a little bit
If,
like it might deserve some attention.
yeah, if like, let's say you have an English teacher that's also certified in library, you know, you could have a principal could say in the staffing, hey, I don't need 8 English teachers. I want to use 7.5 English teachers and have another teacher in there half the day. A principal can do that, with that. And so, and that's, you know, Ms. Curry and I have had conversations with kind of band and different things of that. And so schools earn units, and how principals use that units is pretty flexible. You know, you don't have to have the same number of English teachers as math teachers, you know, that kind of thing. And so we try to guide them to make sure it's within a certain framework. But, you know, you could have, a school could use if they have more certified teachers, could do that if they so choose to. And we worked it through staffing, and it makes sense.
I assume we finished staffing, right, for next year?
Yes.
So maybe y'all might share that with us at some point.
Yep, and, a couple years ago, we just kind of rotated board members in to just kind of meet with us over your schools, so we can get with that, and Tim can schedule those and get you guys in and go over all your schools there. Ms. Rucker's going to kind of hang around after the board meeting. We're going to talk about one of her schools, just kind of go over the staffing report, so, yep, we'd love for you guys to do that.
I know we've had a conversation recently about the number of assistant principals that you earn based on a number threshold. Do y'all think that's the best method, or should a high school or any school for that matter have a set number of administrators? Period.
Personally, I feel like an investment in an assistant principal yields a great return on that investment. So I would defend locally funding assistant principals above what the state provides, in the same way with counselors. Would love to locally fund more librarians and that thing too. Obviously, we can't do everything. In the past, it was kind of at the discretion of the staff of how many assistant principal schools get above, it locally funded. The board kind of wanted some guidelines in that and set those guidelines in 2006 or maybe 2009. Last year was the first time those numbers were revisited, in over a decade. And so we can bring those, I was planning on bringing those up at the next board meeting, just to give you our recommendations on what that would be. The board doesn't have to set guidelines on that. We could do it through staffing, and we could handle it. And we do that with clerical aides and office support staff. Y'all don't approve those. We have rubrics on, if you have so many, you get one clerical, two if you have a certain number.
Sure.
And y'all don't approve that. I mean, you could approve that too. You could also choose to not approve how many assistant principals get. That said, I think y'all should be aware of that, even if you choose to approve it or not. So if y'all want to give us discretion on that and don't want to approve it, we feel like we could work within that too, but it's we're also fine with it bringing up discussion to you guys.
And it's always, I'm not in disagreement of guidelines. It's just, it's tough when you lose an administrator in your school and the value's there. And I understand we have thresholds, but it's just.
Well, yeah, and it's something, so some schools gain units.
Sure.
And some lose. And if you only added them when they gain and you never took away when they lose, it ends up catching up to you.
Right.
Budget-wise, that's what Karen is, the budget hawk on that. And, well, you are. That's your job, to make sure that's a compliment, budget hawk.
I guess, do you
What
see,
did you call her?
Budget hawk. Budget hawk.
We've had those thresholds for years.
Right.
We did update them in Dr. Davis and then again with you, Mr. Massey. But that's how the state funds. It's based on enrollment and what the services a school would need. It's based on your student population, ideally. So, when a school loses enrollment, we need to look at all the areas for locally funded units.
And typically when,
And if they're on teetering on going back and forth, no. If we can project and know 3 years down the road, so I just don't see how we can say all high schools have this many administrators. That's just the thing.
Right.
Something else further with Pennsylvania, it's like when you look at a staffing of the high school, for instance, and we'll take Hazel Green High School, for instance, what they earn from the state is 2 AP units and 2.5 counseling. What we have placed there, even with that, what we're talking about, is there's 3 and 3.
Right.
So you're already adding a unit and a half above the local money just
Right.
Which is approximately abandoned $200,000 local funded. So,
Yeah.
and that's where we get into this juggling act of where can we and what can we
And we have about 28 to 30 locally funded teachers, but we also have about 25 locally funded counselors and APs. So that's a significant investment and effort.
Get in real trouble when their enrollment is declining and they don't make adjustments with their locally funded units. That gets the school district in trouble quicker than anything.
Well, yeah, but in our situation, I mean, aren't our county's growing and our school enrollment's declining, so that's sort of that doesn't make sense, really. But if our revenues are increasing because our population's growing, I assume it is it not?
Our total population's not growing. We have,
Not our school population, our county population.
we're not funded based on county population.
Well, our sales revenue and our property taxes would be, in theory, going up because we have all these people coming here. So do you see that?
I see that we need a new revenue stream for local taxes.
So
So you don't see any growth in our,
I do want, let me,
Sales taxes are growing all across the state.
okay.
Property taxes, 1%.
So if we see an upward trend in revenue, I'm thinking we would, okay, because of what's going on here. Then in theory, we could continue to fund at a given level, our local units.
Everything in as far as inflation, with utilities and everything, not just personnel costs. And our revenue, really, we're staying level with operations, but that's because we're very careful with our locally funded personnel units. And we do a lot, I think, for the county with the budget restraints that we have. The sales taxes, I mean, there's different things we try to do every year, both personnel and non-personnel. We have a lot of salary increases, state mandated, and we have a lot. I'm not gonna go into every detail, but we have so many unfunded state mandates that we use that growth. And I think you understand that, but somehow I think we have to set a standard by having these thresholds across the board. And we can't just, I don't see how it would be efficient or practical to say, well, we'll keep this one, but we can't keep this one. We must have standards. I
Right.
think, to adequately budget, to adequately plan, and to adequately support our schools.
So to Sherry's point about growth and revenue, would there be benefit to bringing in a demographer to come in and do a demographic study of the county, of just the unincorporated Madison County area for that growth that we anticipate? And so we could use that to leverage an increase in sales tax potentially and possibly use to push for an increase in our property taxes. I don't know.
well, and one thing I want to point out, our average enrollment in grades 8 through 12, 6 through 12 is 1,474 kids per grade level, 1,474, okay? Our average K-4 enrollment's 1,336, so that's 1,336 from 1,474. That's 140 kids different per grade level. So it's not like our kids are, once we get our kids, they're staying in, but we're replacing our biggest grade levels are 6 through 12. Our smallest grade levels are K through 5. So every year there's about a delta of 140 there. So this issue is something that is filtering up, and it may be worth kind of understanding that or being able to predict that. It's easy to predict your number of first grade students because you just look at your number of kindergartens. It's easy to predict your sixth grade students because you just look at the number of fifth grade. So you can project years out with that. And but that is something that while we'd love to have as much resources as we can, this is something that we're going to need to approach in a consistent way because it's going to keep happening. I mean, we're going to be losing. We had 3 high schools who were 7A 6 years ago. You know, they're now we have a 7A in to 6As. Madison County was 4A, now they're 5A, that kind of thing. So there's, but that, we saw this coming at Hazel Green, a little bit of decline. Buckhorn's got a little bit of a drop. You know, they've got, Buckhorn's a shy above 1,300, Hazel Green's below 1,250. And that's the smallest both of those have been. And
But it would be interesting because, you know, there is an uptick in the amount of construction that is being planned out in our area. I mean, Sherry, you and I drive by it every day. And it's part of that is the moratorium that's ongoing in Madison. But it would be, I think it would be well worth the effort to just have some sort of a demographic study to see the impact of that construction there and the impact countywide, or at least in the unincorporated in our school system, how that's going to affect us. And again, it could very well be used to support the need for the half cent again and possibly a property tax increase. But something to think about. I'm not asking to.
It's sort of like the neighborhoods are sort of aging,
Mm-hmm.
I think, and so people are staying after
Yep.
their kids leave, so you have that going, and then people are moving in, so
Mm-hmm.
it's sort of leveling off. But my point is that in total, even if they're not coming to our system, certainly they're going to Madison, and those people are going to spend their money in Madison, and so we're still going to benefit from the growth, even if it's not our growth.
Yep.
So I guess if we can see any kind of projection, we wouldn't want to be cutting these positions if we can see the sufficient growth that's coming in our revenue stream to support them. And I don't know if we've looked out to see that.
I did demographic studies, Rick can say, we had a couple during my tenure here. We have not had one recently. But we're so far behind in other areas with our local funding,
And
high, so that that growth is, I mean, we wouldn't survive without the growth every year with our
so local funding makes up what percentage of our budget? 30%. So state funding declines with declining enrollment. So if the local is increasing,
We've been backfilling.
you're saying that's what's balancing it
We
out?
know we have gaps in transportation. We know we have gaps that continue to grow in pre-K. And so, yes, we wouldn't be able to survive in a county that's not so as blessed, you know, in the economy that we have in North Alabama. But we still, with 16 million property taxes, you know, it's not filling that, we haven't filled those gaps yet.
So the priorities are the buses and the pre-K. That would,
No, ma'am, I was giving an example.
I mean, but that is part of it,
I'm
right?
just saying we're fit, but that's just an example of other areas where we can become short. There's tons of those examples, as you well know.
Well, I'm just trying to think through them, though. What would be taking the priority? And so those are valid. I mean, I understand those, but
We have, computer every area has shortfalls and where we need staff. I'm just saying, I'm not sure that we need to not cut when enrollment goes down in those pockets so that we can continue on the journey that we're on to maintain a one-month operating reserve.
They haven't had the experience of having the state come up and speak to you about not having a 1-month operating reserve. It wasn't very pleasant.
I mean, but we do have pockets in schools that are losing enrollment, and that's why we have the standard as to how we staff to keep everything in line.
And we're probably going to have to help fund our local units with another raise. You know, we have to project that.
So with our loss of units, are there enough gains that kind of just levels it out? I mean, you said Madison County, you know, they've enrollment's up there in Madison County High. Is it about level, or are we just down overall? Or we're losing units
We're going
overall?
down about 140 kids a year. But each school earns their own units. But what happens is whenever you start losing teaching units, it ends up affecting librarians when you drop below a threshold, or affects counselors or assistant principals with that. The state funds you at assistant principals based on the same thresholds too with that. So you get OCE, other cost expenditure funds, based on total enrollment of students, is that right? So, but OCE is not that big. So,
And we're still, you know, far behind with OCE and our support staff as far as the, state funding those units.
Mr. Massey?
yes, sir.
If I can, I'll send tomorrow to you a list of the subdivisions. I got a list of subdivisions in about October that were approved for 2018, and about 85% of them are all in one district. This is by commission district, but District 1. It's about 85% of them. They have a few in 4, a few in 3, 1 or 2 and 2, but.
Which one's one?
That's
Commission.
District 1.
what, Rod Jones? Yeah.
So it'll be, that's mostly Hayes Green,
Right.
Buckhorn area. That district accounts for at least 85%, not 90% of the new lot approvals. Now, that doesn't mean a house is approved, it's just what's approved. So this is what I would expect to see starting this summer, house on the ground for the next year and a half.
So the good news is our schools with this has the capacity to accommodate that. So what you don't want to be is at 110% capacity and new subdivisions coming in. So, you know, we've almost taken on an extra grade level with pre-K in our schools, and we've been able to do that because of the slight dip in there. I mean, it's almost adding a whole nother grade level with that. So,
We do watch the growth patterns, and that's what we're doing here, and I'll send the county information tomorrow. So we know what to expect over the
and,
next couple of years.
quickly growing systems like Madison City added 600 students after the school year started. So that's 600 students they're not getting credit for funding for teachers. So honestly, when our system was growing rapidly, it was extremely difficult on the system to keep up. When you're slightly decreasing, you're kind of funded on the previous year's enrollment. For example, Hazel Green had that huge senior class last year. They got the funding for that now. So it's just next year they won't get the funding for that class that they've already left. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to, if there's a leveling off or even a slight little decrease. If you start growing and growing rapidly, you're having to spend more teaching units because you're not earning them, more local teaching units, and you start dealing with capacity issues. So we're actually in a really good place to accommodate growth that I do think will come. And honestly, it's encouraging to see if we're big on one end or another, you want to have more capacity in your lower grade levels, because those older kids are going to graduate in the next 6 years. So we've got room to bring kids into our elementary schools and that kind of thing. So and that's the positive piece of that.
Will that revenue continue out in the general fund? You know, you would like to be able, you've seen the capital plan, you've seen unfunded needs, maintenance is not even on there. We don't budget anything for maintenance anymore, we haven't for years, and that's just one other example.
Yeah.
As revenues increase, we're able to do more in so many different areas.
I just quickly, I went over the staffing sheets for our elementary schools, and pretty much every elementary school are losing units across our district, except for Newmarket, Owens Crossroads, Riverton Elementary, Mount Carmel, and Walnut Grove, and they're basically staying the same, where Mount Carmel and Riverton were able to help out our intermediate school by giving some units. They can't even give them anymore. So it's not just in the Hazel Green district, or, you know, it's all of our elementaries for the most part are losing teaching units this year, where they've all had to make cuts. So that's just, it's just, as Mr. Massey has stated, it's a student movement, you know, when we get them, we grow, and when we don't, we have to make an unfortunate cut. But I just scanned over there, and so it's across the district, it's not like in one particular area. And the ones that are staying put are smaller ones where we can only do so much. It's not that they shouldn't be cut more, but they can't, because you can't function within these lines. So that's, I don't know if that helps.
And we can get you guys in and go over the staffing reports for all your schools in your district. We'll set those appointments up if you'd like to take us up on it.
Okay. Any additional discussion on the personnel items and addendum?
Is that what this was?
That's what this was.
Well, there's a transfer, Ms.
I'm keeping track.
That kind of dominoed the thing, because Monrovia had earned 2 librarians because there were over 1,000.
I got you.
And so we had to transfer a librarian to another place where there's an opening, and
We're barely under 1,000. That was my
yeah,
point, but.
and so we started the domino of a discussion.
Okay, I got you.
So all those in favor of approving the personnel items and addendum as submitted, say aye.
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 One more.
Okay, I recommend approval of the following supplemental contracts as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation of approval of the following supplemental contracts as submitted. Any discussion? None? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
All right, I don't have other business. Does anybody else? It's on the agenda, but I think we're,
Nope.
Okay, I'm good.
Additional other business. Anybody have anything for the good of the board?
Well, I'd kind of like to bring up the registration thing, if you could discuss that. It's kind of new. And
all right, Keith. Want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So the, all currently enrolled students, they received letters in the mail hopefully this week. Most of them went out on Monday and Tuesday of this week. The main purpose of that, Ms. Rucker, is to ensure that we have all up-to-date information for all of our students, contact information, up-to-date records, that sort of thing. So far, knock on wood, we have not received too many major issues with that. We're working through several different minor issues, working to make sure that our federal programs compliance issues are up to date and in order with all of our documents that have to be either uploaded to the Power School portal or documents that have to be kept in cumulative folders. So far, things are going very well with it. I do understand that there's been comments and things made on in social media, questions from parents and that sort of thing. We, as a district are trying to, we can't over-communicate why we're doing this, we can't over-communicate the need for it, to our parents, but, so far I have not received any direct, phone calls from parents, upset about the need for them to have to re-enroll. This time next year, things will be a whole lot better because we'll already have all of our students entered into our system. It's just a matter of getting through this next month and a half or so, getting all of our nearly 20,000 students re-enrolled into Power School portal.
So if you receive any negative calls, just forward them to Keith. And
I guess
Isn't this?
you're supposed to upload your proof of eligibility, right?
Proof of residence, yes, ma'am.
Right. And so can you submit it without uploading that?
You can, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The reason behind that is because we don't necessarily want to allow technology to prohibit anybody from being able to register. If they can't, or if they can't get the documents uploaded to the website, then the directions are for them to come into the school. Each of the schools and the registrars have already been informed, they're gonna have stations set up with kiosks, to help to assist parents with getting, those documents uploaded if needed. One issue, that we worked through this week was, the certificate of immunization of the blue cards. Parents were asked, a couple parents had asked, why are we having to upload a blue card when the school already has it? Well, I communicated that information with the registrars today that we're not requiring, all of our currently enrolled students to, those parents to upload the blue card because we already have that on file at the school. But all new students to Madison County Schools will be required to upload, the blue card or the certificate of immunization. And any new students to our district, they're having to come into the school, those instructions are on the website, and in that letter to come into the school and provide proof of residency.
I guess my concern is the burden on the registrar. If people aren't uploading their documents, how are they going to get all these I mean, they don't normally have to do that, so that seems like a huge task. If they don't pop into the registration process, how are we going to, do we have the resources to manage that?
Well, there is no doubt going to be a burden for the next 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks for sure. As far as the documents, if the parents do not upload the documents, the required documents, and they are being asked to come correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know the number of how many students we have currently, entered into the portal? I'm not exact number, it was going up pretty quickly. Yes, and there, granted, there are concerns on the registrar's part. We're offering a work session tomorrow morning for them to come in and work through some of those issues, answer questions. There's going to be some growing pains, and that's something that I've expressed to all the registrars and help them understand that any documents that do not get uploaded immediately is going to be okay. Those documents are not going to be required immediately for continued enrollment. We already know the students are currently enrolled in our district. It's just a matter of maintaining proper records and maintaining up-to-date information for continued enrollment. That's the ultimate goal through Power School registration.
So next,
Yes, it's not all going to fall back on the registrars to ensure that those documents get uploaded.
But as a system, we're going to be, we're going to actually follow up and make sure the documents at the end of the day get there, right?
so this is really just, this year is going to be the major growing pain. Next year, it's just going to be, if, as a parent, I'll just verify the information is correct and then continue on. There really won't be this same process again next year. So we're just talking about this year as the main issue. Okay,
We've asked parents to get the information uploaded by May 31st.
okay.
The obvious understanding that that won't happen for all 10,000 students. So we'll send out reminder letters in June and then make phone calls preferably in July for the students that have not, for our returning students that have not gotten registered.
Is this similar to what Madison's been doing
I was
the last
gonna ask
2
that.
years, or is it?
Yes, ma'am, it's similar, it's not the exact same program, but it is similar. This is, however, the same company that the state has adopted to go with our student information system.
Thank you, Keith. Anybody else? I just hope everyone has a nice, enjoyable, safe holiday weekend. And hopefully the weather will improve between now and Easter Sunday. So, if there's no additional discussion, I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned.